All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the chaotic, super high-stakes world of distributed system failures. We're going to tell a story, and it's one that starts with a tiny, almost invisible glitch and ends with an absolute production catastrophe. Honestly, it's a nightmare that pretty much every single engineer is going to face at some point in their career. So buckle up, because we are unpacking the mechanics of failure, how these small hiccups mutate into unstoppable forces, and most importantly, the exact engineering patterns you need to survive them.
Picture this. It's midnight. You're the engineer on call. Suddenly, your pager just screams to life. You wipe the sleep out of your eyes, crack open your dashboard, and you're probably expecting to see a minor, isolated issue, right? Like maybe a single database running a bit hot. But instead, you just see a sea of red. A minor, highly localized network hiccup in just one zone has somehow blown up into a catastrophic company-wide outage. Dozens of microservices are failing. Requests are dropping left and right. The business is quite literally losing money by the second. So the question is, how on earth did one tiny failure take down the whole ship?
To really understand this, we need to look at what engineers at AWS call the butterfly effect. See, in distributed systems, failure isn't an anomaly. It's an absolute certainty. Network cables get sliced by rogue backhoes, hardware slowly degrades, switches drop packets, and unpredictable garbage collection pauses will just freeze your applications when you least expect it. Because these interactions between services are practically guaranteed to fail eventually, functioning despite the presence of failures absolutely must be your normal mode of operation. But if a system isn't designed for this harsh reality, a localized failure doesn't stay localized. It flaps its wings, and a literal hurricane rips right through your architecture.
Let's dive a little deeper and look at the formal term for our midnight disaster, a cascading failure. A cascading failure is essentially a chain reaction. It happens when one struggling component forces its workload or its unmitigated traffic onto another component, totally overwhelming it. That one fails, spills over to the next and the next. It's like setting up a line of dominoes, but instead of just neatly falling over, each domino violently explodes and takes out 3 more with it.
Section 1. Anatomy of a retry storm. The clone army that destroys databases.
Let's walk through the mathematical horror of this process step by step. Step 1. A localized dependency fails. Maybe it's just a brief network timeout, nothing crazy. Step 2. The client trying to reach that dependency thinks, oh, whatever, I'll just try again, and it retries the operation. Step 3. The clients of those clients experience a delay, so now they retry. Step 4. This triggers a massive exponential growth in traffic. All of a sudden, your service isn't just handling its normal load, it's fighting off a massive clone army of identical retry requests. And these clones? They're all demanding CPU cycles, memory, and database connections at the exact moment your system is already on its knees.
This brings us to a really harsh truth from our sources. Quote, retries are necessary and dangerous. They amplify load and increase tail latency. This perfectly validates what every engineer eventually learns the hard way. I mean, we build retries to provide reliability, right? We want our apps to be resilient. But without strict boundaries, this exact reliability mechanism becomes the system's executioner. It just amplifies the load until the server simply runs out of memory or CPU and dies.
Imagine a system that easily handles 100 requests per second, responding to each in a lightning-fast 1 millisecond. On the surface, it looks incredibly healthy. But then, a bottleneck happens. Maybe it's an unoptimized database query or a sudden lock, and the system completely stalls for 100 seconds. All those incoming requests, plus all their retries, just pile up at the front door, slamming right into a brick wall.
This dynamic feeds directly into a concept known as the tail at scale. In hyperscale systems, your average response time, your P50, is actually a terrible indicator of your user's real experience. If you look at the 99th percentile, the P99, that is where the pain lives. When a retry storm hits and a system stalls, those P99 latency spikes drag down the entire architecture. 1 in 10 user requests gets pulled into this massive delay. And because microservices are so heavily interconnected, that delay propagates upstream, causing this massive cascading timeout waterfall.
As one of our sources so perfectly summarizes, queuing is where latency goes to grow quietly. Man, that hits the nail on the head. When your system gets overwhelmed, requests just sit in a queue waiting for their turn. If that queue is unbounded and you have absolutely no back pressure telling the producers to slow down, latency just stretches out to infinity. Users are staring at endless loading spinners, clients keep mashing the refresh button sending even more retries, and your microservice architecture quietly breaks under the invisible weight of the queue.
Section 2. Breaking the circuit, stopping the bleeding.
Okay, so the absolute crucial takeaway here is that failing fast is far, far better than letting a system choke to death. Enter the circuit breaker pattern. Without a circuit breaker, a struggling server will just stubbornly keep accepting connections until it totally runs out of memory and crashes hard. But think about the electrical panel in your house. If a service detects that a downstream dependency is failing or timing out at a crazy high rate, the circuit trips. Instead of sending more traffic and retries into a burning building, the circuit breaker instantly rejects new requests and returns an error immediately. This gives the overloaded dependency the precious breathing room it desperately needs to recover, instead of just being stomped into the ground by endless retries.
But look, when we do retry, we have to be smart about it. Contrast these two approaches. Dangerous, naive retries are completely unbounded. They hit the server at a constant rate, and they are totally blind to system load. This is exactly how you create a retry storm. By contrast, the absolute gold standard is jittered exponential backoff. You put a hard bound on the number of retries, you exponentially increase the wait time between each attempt, and you add jitter, basically randomized delays. Jitter ensures that 1,000 failing clients don't all decide to retry at the exact same millisecond, preventing a massive coordinated wave of traffic from taking down your server.
Section 3. Safe retries and back pressure. Idempotency is non-negotiable.
That brings us to idempotency. Mathematically, it means f of x equals f of x. But in plain English, it just means an operation produces the exact same result whether you run it once or 1,000 times. This is what makes retries entirely safe. Think about apps like Uber or Stripe. When you hit Pay Now and your network hiccups, your phone retries the request. Without idempotency, you'd get charged twice, which is obviously a total customer service nightmare. To solve this, clients generate a unique UUID, an idempotency key, for that specific transaction. If the service sees that exact same key come through again, it says, "Ah, right, I already processed this," and simply returns the cached success response. Idempotency literally transforms a super unreliable network into a safe, reliable abstraction. All right, let's distill all of this down into some rapid-fire, highly practical advice that you can literally take back to your desk today to stabilize your systems. Number 1, instrument end-to-end P99 latency. Make it your headline metric, not your average. Number 2, put strict deadlines on your requests so your downstream calls don't just sit there waiting forever. Number 3, if you happen to use request hedging, sending a duplicate request to cut tail latency, cap it, or you're going to accidentally double your traffic. Number 4, isolate resources and shed load before you try to scale out of a problem. And finally, number 5, bound your queues and fail fast to keep your P99 stable.
Section 4. Preparing for the inevitable. Chaos engineering.
As our sources from Uber and AWS point out, trying to figure out a root cause in the middle of a super stressful, adrenaline-fueled outage is just a terrible idea. You are practically guaranteed to panic and introduce a second bug. Instead, we have to proactively test for failure. In practice, this means looking at a matrix of intentional failure modes. For server impairment, you randomly reboot instances or delete Kubernetes pods. For network issues, you intentionally introduce latency or just start dropping connections. For dependency impairment, you deliberately degrade the APIs that your system actually relies on. By running these chaos experiments in a controlled environment, you force your circuit breakers to trip, you validate your retry logic, and you actually prove that a failure in one tier won't cascade and take down the rest of the business.
We've seen how a tiny flutter can build into a massive retry storm that crushes databases, and we've walked through the circuit breakers, backoff strategies, and chaos testing you need to survive it. Organizations have to plan for disruption instead of just sitting around wondering whether it will happen. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. Take a hard look at your own architecture today. If a core dependency stalls for 100 seconds right now, is your system truly ready for the storm?